Have you ever found a piece of rock that you thought maybe might have gold in it? It's an important skill to be able to identify gold in rocks. And if you're going to prospect for gold or, go out looking for gold, being able to identify gold in rocks is what you need to know. And, I get a lot of people who contact me through my YouTube channel. And the most common question I get asked is, hey Chris, I found these rocks and I think they have gold in them. Can you take a look at my pictures and tell me if I have gold or not? And the problem is it's just not super easy to look at rocks and say, hey, yeah, for sure this got gold in it, or no, it doesn't. To tell you the truth, I've had people send me pictures, send me 5 pictures of the same rock. And my thought on 2 of the pictures is, maybe that is gold. And on 3 of the pictures, I'd look at saying, no, that's not gold. But it's 5 pictures of the same rock. And so that's what I'm saying. Sometimes it looks pretty obvious, and sometimes it is pretty obvious. But other times, it's not so obvious. And the problem with photographs is a lot of times it's blurry cell phone photographs, and, it's really hard to tell the details. And so I just don't offer a service to do that. But what I'm offering instead is something for you to learn the skill of being able to identify gold in rocks. And we're going to look at stuff that people commonly mistake for gold, and people, different examples of real gold, and how to test for it. We're going to look at these different factors of color, luster, conductivity and stuff. We're going to do some field tests. I'm going to take you out in the backyard and do some tests. And we're going to talk in the end about easily visible gold and not so easily visible gold, and what to do about it, and if you think that you might have found some good ore. So the first factor is color. Well, and that's the thing that you can get from a picture, right? I can tell what color it is, but the truth is there's hundreds of minerals that are yellowish or yellow gold. And a lot of people think that, all minerals that are yellow must be gold. Well, that's not true. And then there's even minerals that are yellow and yellow gold and have a kind of a metallic luster and still aren't gold. I got right here, see this chunk? I'll show you a close-up of it. It's nice and shiny, but let me show you a close-up.
Here's that chunk of pyrite, and if you look closely, you can see a whole lot of little cubic and square shapes. And in fact, the whole thing is just thousands of little cubic pyrite crystals stuck together. Now, it's got the right color, and it's certainly metallic, but it's not gold.
This is not gold. This is not a 2-pound gold nugget. It's about a 2-pound chunk of pyrite. Pretty much pure pyrite, too. Worth, I think I paid $5 or $10 for it. So it's not super valuable. And the 3 minerals that I get people mistaking for gold are limonite, mica, and pyrite. But there are others, there's potential for others, but those are the 3 most common ones that people mistake. And color makes a difference, but color is just one thing. And the truth is, with different cameras and different lighting and different angles and stuff like that, a color can be a little bit different. And it can, like I say, I got one time a guy sent me 5 photos of the same rock, and 3 of them I said, no, that's not gold, and 2 of them I said, maybe. But it's photos of the same rock, but different angle, different lighting, different, and so a slightly different appearance. What's really important for gold is the luster. Pretty much all gold has a metallic luster. Now, if I had a red brick, just a construction brick in my hand and a chunk of shiny aluminum or something, I'd say, hey, look, this brick has an earthen luster. It doesn't look like a metal at all. And if I held up a nice shiny piece of aluminum, I would say, hey, this looks like a metal, right? And gold looks like a metal, okay? It is a metal. It doesn't just look like it, it is a metal. and it has a metallic luster. And so things that have kind of an earthen luster, that have the shiny level of a dirt clod or a brick or some asphalt or something like that, if they're not shiny like a metal, probably not gold. Conductivity. Most minerals are not very conductive to electricity, but gold is. And that's actually why metal detectors work on gold, because metal detectors don't just detect metal per se, but almost all metals are conductive. And what metal detectors find is things that conduct electricity. And so there are a few minerals that conduct electricity too, that aren't metal. And metal detectors will find those minerals, like cuprite is one of them. The minerals that conduct electricity well are rare, but gold conducts electricity pretty rare. That's why you can find it with a metal detector, but you can also test it with a voltmeter. We're going to talk about that kind of stuff. Cleavage. Cleavage is one that is really good for mica. We're going to look at these. And mica is something that if you take a nail or a pin and scratch it, you can kind of bust it up. It easily breaks up into little flakes because it has a perfect cleavage. It's basically a stack of things that you can basically knock off all these stacks. And sometimes if you hit a piece of mica with a hammer, you'll actually bust it up into little bits of glitter. We'll talk more about mica. Streak is something if you make a streak on a piece of white ceramic, it will show you what the metal looks like in a really fine, like a dust of it. So we're going to take a look at these and go into them and go into the details. Let me start by showing you the examples of what people send me and some positive and negative, what gold looks like and what doesn't look like, what things people mistake for gold and what real gold looks like. And we're going to kind of trade off and go through that. So we're going to go through that, and we're going to start with limonite, which is the yellow earthen material that people often mistake for gold. Let's take a look.
Some of you may be surprised, but this is the mineral most often sent to me in photographs asking if it's gold. And you look at this and you think, well, it's, you have yellow material, and actually the dark brown and the yellow gold color are basically the same mineral. It's a mineral called limonite. It's an iron oxide. It's chemically basically the same as rust. It's iron oxide and some moisture. And, the big difference between this and gold is that gold is a metal and it has a metallic luster, whereas this is kind of the right color, but it just looks nothing like metal. I mean, it has the luster of a brick or a piece of concrete or something like that. And nobody's going to pick up a piece of concrete and think, oh, this is a metal. But people want to believe what they want to believe. And this mineral is often found with quartz. So you can find, bits of this in quartz because pyrite, which is a common mineral found in quartz, which is iron sulfide, when pyrite oxidizes, it can form this yellow material. And so you get quartz with this yellow material in it, and people want to believe that it's gold, but it's not. And here's another piece, the same kind of yellow mineral, the same kind of general appearance, kind of an earthy appearance, not really looking much like a metal. But again, like I say, you can find this type of mineral in quartz, in quartz veins, even in quartz veins that otherwise may have gold in them. So although this isn't gold, there may be, find a quartz vein, there may be gold in it. Not this stuff, but there may otherwise be gold in it because this is a breakdown material from pyrite. And I'll add that this is a very common mineral. It's found in many kinds of situations because iron minerals are very common in the earth, and an oxidation product from weathering of iron minerals can produce this limonite, which is, this is something that people mistake for gold. Now, this is a 7.5 ounce gold nugget that some friends of mine found a few years ago. But just for comparison's sake, look at this. It doesn't look earthy. It doesn't look like a chunk of yellow concrete. It looks like a metal. It shines. And even though gold isn't always super shiny, it almost always has this kind of a metallic luster. The next most common thing I get asked about is this. Now, this is shiny and metallic and certainly the right yellow color, but this isn't gold. This is mica, and it's a very common, in fact, it's among the most common minerals in Earth, and it forms in a lot of rocks. There's a lot of rocks that have significant mica in them, and sometimes the rocks have yellow mica like this. Now, mica comes in all different colors. The most common color for mica is this silvery kind of color, but if it has a little bit of iron in it, it can color it yellow, just like what I showed you a minute ago. It can also come in shades of green. This mica mineral is colored with chromium that gives it this kind of almost emerald green color. But it's the golden color mica like this that really kind of fools people, because if you look at it straight on, it does have a kind of metallic look, and it does have kind of the right color. At least some of this does. The other colors don't look so much like it, but this color does. Now, the thing about mica is that it occurs in sheets. It grows in these sheets, and if you look face on to the sheet, it does look kind of metallic, but it's a kind of an appearance like looking at a roll of saran wrap or something like that. If you look at it, it looks metallic, but with this stuff, you can take a nail, and if you scratch hard on the piece, it'll kind of break it up into little glittery fragments. And if you look at the edge of a crystal, the edge doesn't look metallic at all. And you can break that up, like I say, with a nail into sheets. And the other thing is that if you get the sheets thin, just like a roll of saran wrap, you roll off one sheet of saran wrap, it doesn't look metallic. It's perfectly transparent. And the same with the thin sheets of mica, they start getting transparent. And the one thing about mica is, one thing about gold anyway, is that gold is not transparent. Mica is in thin sheets. Large but thin sheets of mica have actually even been used as high temperature windows in furnaces, where they create a little window made of mica because it resists the heat better than glass does. One of the other things that fools people about mica is that it can be found in rocks. I mean, it's not just deposits of nothing but mica. You can find it in various rocks because it's a fairly common mineral. And this stuff is kind of yellow, but it on edge, if you look at these crystals on edge, they don't look metallic at all. And they do break up, like I say, if you poke on the edge, you can break it up into thin sheets. Finally, we get to pyrite. And while pyrite is the stuff, when it's fresh anyway, looks the most like gold, because you can see it definitely has a good metallic luster. It's not just, the metallic luster is all over the piece. And of course, it's the classic fool's gold, right? But it's not something I get a lot of because simply pyrite, if exposed to the surface, air and water, that kind of thing, over time, it just turns to rust. And so when people pick up stuff on the surface, they may find something that once was pyrite, but now it's brown or yellow or something, and it doesn't really look like gold. But pyrite, if you're looking through an old mine dump or something like that, it's very, very common to find quartz with nice pyrite crystals sprinkled through it. And, for someone who doesn't know to recognize pyrite, it's easy enough to think it might be gold. Now, here's a close-up of a good-sized pyrite crystal, and there's a lot of things we can learn here. First, you can really easily see the square or cubic shape that the crystal often forms in, although not all pyrite forms into this cubic crystal shape. You can also see the striations, the lines across the crystal face, both in the big crystal and the little crystal in the face. Both have lines that go across the crystal surface. That's not something you'll normally see in gold. But perhaps the most and of course, the other thing is a lot of times pyrite has this greenish cast to it. But the thing that's most identifies pyrite over gold is its fracture and brittleness. If you look at the edges of this cubic crystal or the square face there, you can see chips all around the edge where it's been bumped and knocked and broken. And the fracture is a kind of a circular fracture. It's called a conchoidal fracture. It's basically the same kind of fracture as glass. It breaks this way because it's very brittle, just like glass is brittle. Whereas gold, of course, if it's struck, it smashes down, it bends, because gold is very malleable and bends and mushes down. It changes its shape easily. Whereas pyrite, it's brittle, you hit it, it shatters. And we're going to take a closer look at that in a few minutes in this video. Pyrite, if you get a big piece of it, you'll be able to tell that it's also quite dense and heavy. It's not anywhere near as dense and heavy as gold, but it's unusually heavy. And nice pyrite crystals of large size. This one is about the size of a tennis ball. Nice ones, perfect crystals like this, have good value. You can see this one was for sale at the Tucson Gem Show for $550 US, and that's significant for something that, well, isn't gold. The close association of pyrite with vein quartz is also something that, people will be searching through old gold mine dumps and maybe find something like this with pretty quartz crystals and yellow metallic things on it. And, well, you might wish that it was gold because gold is associated with vein quartz, of course. But so is pyrite, and this is a beautiful specimen of pyrite crystals on quartz. It would have some value to it too, not maybe $500, but this is still a specimen that's very nice and worth having. This picture illustrates why I don't get a lot of people sending me pictures of pyrite and asking if that's gold. Because look at the piece in the light color piece with the dark brown there. All the dark brown that you're seeing is actually oxidized pyrite. It once was gleamingly metallic yellow, but after years of exposure to air and water, just like years of exposure to a piece of metal that's sitting, a piece of iron that's sitting out in the yard, it rusts and just turns to this brown, rusty color, limonite, goethite, this kind of material. And it no longer looks like this shiny metallic yellow of pyrite. Some of these, the bigger cubes, if you bust them open, they may have a remnant of the metallic yellow on the inside, but all the outer part is all been oxidized away to rust. And that's why I don't get a lot of people sending me stuff like this, because it doesn't really look like gold. Here's another yellow sulfide mineral that people sometimes mistake for gold. This is closely related to pyrite. It's called chalcopyrite. It's basically copper, iron, and sulfur rather than just iron and sulfur, which is pyrite is. This is an important mineral that's used in the mining of copper. It's an important ore of copper. But, I once had a guy come with a piece bigger than a basketball, and it wasn't pure chalcopyrite, but it was mostly chalcopyrite. And he laid it on my desk. I was at a gold show with a lot of other people, and he said, "What do you think of this?" And I thought, well, it's a nice specimen of copper ore, because he was thinking he'd just laid down a 50-pound chunk of gold on my table. And he was kind of surprised. He said, "Well, is it worth anything?" And I said, "Well, if you have a mountain of it, then sure. But if you just have a piece or two, then no, not really." But it is another sulfide mineral that people sometimes mistake for gold. You know, one of the things they do when they're teaching folks how to recognize counterfeit money, to tell the difference between a real dollar bill and a fake one, is they show them a whole bunch of real money. And that's kind of what we're going to do. We're going to go through a bunch of pieces of real gold, not fake gold, or not stuff that people would mistake as gold, but the real thing, so you can get more familiar with it. This is a 17-ounce specimen of leaf gold from Northern California, from the Mother Lode country. This is some real gold actually in a quartz vein in an underground mine down deep in the earth. Here's the quartz as it normally is, impaled with a bunch of gold. Here's a line of very fine gold crystals in a line in some quartz ore from Nevada. And the gold actually in this is very, very fine grained. If you were to look at it with a high magnification, you'd see that it's not just one line, but a whole bunch of little pieces that are kind of stuck together. Here's a sheet of leaf gold in a dark iron-stained ore specimen from Colorado. But this individual sheet of gold is just like a thin foil. Here's a real gold quartz specimen from Arizona. This is actually a whole section of vein. A 1-inch thick vein can still be full of gold, just as this example shows. Here's a nice specimen of quartz with gold sprinkled all through it. You can see the gold is kind of in lines. It formed in the cracks between the quartz after the quartz had formed. And here is another piece of quartz with real gold in it. And you can see the beautiful metallic yellow that's not cubic crystals. This is what real gold in quartz looks like. This piece was found in Northern California with a metal detector. And just for comparison, this is a chunk of pyrite in quartz. Now, it could be mistaken for gold, but if you look real closely, there's little cubic crystals, and even between some of the crystals, the pyrite is starting to oxidize and turn to rust because it's been exposed to air and water near the surface of the earth. And so this is not gold, this is pyrite. The problem with pictures, though, unless you have really good images, good pictures, it can be hard to tell. This is actually real gold in quartz. And while this looks very similar, this is actually pyrite in quartz. This is not gold. This is your basic fool's gold in quartz. And this is one of the kind of pictures like I get sent. It's a picture of some yellow colored thing. It doesn't look very metallic, but maybe it's just that the picture is kind of crummy. It doesn't look like gold, but then again, like I say, it could just be that the picture is very low quality and doesn't show it. That's why it's so much better to see it in person. And then the other thing is to do some actual tests. And that's why I'm going to start now taking a look at actual hard tests that you can do to test to see whether what you think you have might be gold, or whether it's not. And you can use some foolproof tests to really figure out what you got. And we're going to go into those right now. The first test I want to look at is conductivity. Now, things like limonite or mica, that kind of stuff, don't conduct at all. And so if you test how conductive the sample is and it says it's not conductive at all, well, it's not gold. Gold is a halfway decent conductor. It's not the greatest of all, but it's a good conductor. Pyrite, on the other hand, can be a very poor conductor at best. Sometimes it's not conductive at all. And so, try on your voltmeter and test it. If you get good conductivity, it may well be gold. If you get poor conductivity or no conductivity, it's probably going to be not gold. So just to be clear on this, you measure conductivity with your meter set on ohms. And the higher the ohms, the less conductivity you have. So, the things like mica will be super high ohms because it's not conductive. And pyrite will be high ohms. If you want to test something just for comparison to what gold might be, test a piece of aluminum or lead, and it will show you that it's pretty low ohms. And so that's a good comparison. Ohms is a measure of resistance, and the opposite of ohms is conductivity, right? So the low ohms is conductive, high ohms is not conductive. This type of test is also used on chunks of quartz and gold to test if the gold goes through the quartz. So if you have a piece of gold sticking out on one side of a piece of quartz and a piece of gold sticking out on another side of the piece of quartz, you can test it with a conductivity meter to see whether they connect inside the quartz. And if it shows that it's low ohms from one side to the other, then it connects from one side to the other.
So I'm doing a demonstration of some testing. And what I've got here that we're going to test is a piece of mica. I don't know if you can see my finger through it. I got a picture. Let me show you.
So this is a close-up of that little sheet of mica, the little piece of mica, and you can clearly see my finger through it. And actually, mica ends up looking sort of metallic because of all the different sheets. It's kind of like saran wrap. If you ever look at a roll of saran wrap, an individual sheet is perfectly clear, but you roll it up in a roll with many layers and it sort of looks metallic. That's how this works.
It's partly transparent. And that's one of the things about mica is it can be peeled off in little sheets, and when you get them thin, they're transparent. Gold is not transparent. Another thing I got is a piece of pyrite.
The image on this is a little dark, but this is a small chunk of pyrite.
We're gonna take the hammer and smash this. We're gonna smash a piece of the mica too. And then I've got a bullet here. Now, you say, well, why do you got a bullet? And the reason is that I don't want to smash a really nice gold nugget, and lead acts the same way as gold. So what I'm going to do is smash this bullet.
And here is a close-up of that bullet. It's just a little .22 bullet that I picked up while metal detecting a while back.
And you're going to see how it mushes down, and I'll take a close-up picture and show you how it smashes. This is how lead smashes. You're going to see that this little chunk of pyrite just shatters into a little bits. And this, I'm going to take a part of this piece of mica and smash it, and if I hit it enough times, it'll probably turn into a bunch of little glittery bits. Because it easily breaks into sheets, it really is brittle, but it doesn't smash quite the way pyrite does. So let me show you. This is the smash test. I got a good hammer. We're gonna pound some stuff and see what happens. Okay, I've got it zoomed in on this, on the plate, and there's our piece of pyrite. Okay, let's hit it a couple of times and we'll see what it looks like. Smashed to bits. Okay, that's what pyrite looks like if you hit a piece of pyrite. All right, so let's try something different. Let's try the bullet, because that's going to act how gold acts. Now you see how that's smashed out flat? I can keep hitting it and it would just get thinner and thinner. But that shows you what gold will do when you strike it with a hammer.
So here is a close-up of what our smashed bullet looks like, and you can even see the details of the rifling lines that were originally manufactured on it. And if your gold smashes perfectly flat like this, then it's a good chance it really is gold.
Now let's go for the mica. There's the mica. It took a lot more hits, but you can see it just breaks up into little glittery bits. And that's what happens with mica. So there's your hit test. Now I had showed at the beginning of my lectures on this particular video about limonite. And limonite will break up like pyrite does. It'll just smash into bits if you hit it hard with a hammer. So limonite and pyrite, same kind of reaction. Lead or gold, completely different. Mica, a little bit different, but still, it doesn't smash flat. It does not look like what I did to the lead. And that's our demonstration.
One last test that I'll mention, if you have access to nitric acid and you understand the safety procedures of handling strong acids like nitric, then you can dilute the concentrated acid down about 1:1, so about equal parts of water and nitric acid concentrate. And then you can put your suspected metal in that. Now, silicates like mica or something like that won't do anything in nitric, but other metals, if somehow you have a piece of brass or something like that that you are thinking is gold, it will dissolve in nitric, diluted nitric quite easily. But when you put the gold nuggets in nitric acid, yeah, they will not dissolve in just nitric mixed with water. So that gives you a good handle on some different tests between the conductivity and the hammer test, and looking at it and seeing what the luster of the material is, and even testing it in nitric acid. That should really give you a good handle on how to test and identify that your material is gold.
Now, because most inexperienced prospectors rely so heavily on the color appearance, I want to make note that not all gold is exactly the same color. You're used to beautiful yellows like this, beautiful golden buttery colors, but that's not the only color for gold. This pale yellow metal stuff in this specimen is also mostly gold. It's just a natural alloy with a lot of silver in it, and so the silver, because it's a different color, makes the gold very, very pale. And in fact, there are actually, and I found some of this, gold specimens that have so much silver in them that they're silver in color. They're not gold colored. And so natural high silver gold, called electrum, that's the name for it, is common in areas rich in silver. And so in many places in Nevada, where Nevada is famous for its silver mines, it produces gold that's super pale like this because of all the silver in it. And in fact, this specimen is from Nevada. That is why it's so important to do the tests that I've just gone over, with like the hammer test or the conductivity test. This stuff will conduct electricity perfectly well. If you hit it with a hammer, it would smush out like lead does. And so these tests, and including the acid, you put acid on this won't react. And so the tests that I've just shown you are super valuable in really determining if what you have is gold.
And now I want to talk about easily visible gold versus not so easily visible gold. So far we've talked about stuff that you can see pretty easily, and that's what attracts people. People see something and say, "Ooh, that looks pretty good," and go out and think, "Well, maybe that's gold," and it could be. But there's also the not so easily visible. You can still have pretty rich ore that doesn't have any really visible gold. So let me show you some pictures of ores that are pretty rich, but just don't have that much visible gold, or basically almost no visible gold. Certainly not gold that you'd easily see if you were just looking at something on the ground. Ooh, that looks pretty interesting, Let's talk about the not so easily visible gold and then how you handle that, because you can test for that kind of stuff too.
This is a specimen of super rich gold and silver ore. The dark colored streak across the middle of the quartz there is the silver minerals, but there's also 6 ounces of gold in this rock per every ton, which works out to be about $10 a pound at current prices. Now it doesn't really have any real obvious gold in it. What you can maybe see is a couple of specks of yellow color is pyrite, but you could get the gold out of this by crushing it and panning it, or crushing it and running it through a sluice type of thing, or gold cube, something like that, to recover the fine gold. The trick with this is that the gold is in really small particles. This is some gold ore from a prospect that a friend of mine has been working for a while. And this stuff is also pretty rich in gold, but there's no visible or obvious gold here. But if you crush this down and run it through something like a gold cube or some other recovery device, it yields about $500 worth of gold for a 50-pound bucket. So it's pretty rich in gold, but there's nothing obvious. And the pieces, I can tell you because I've seen it, are real small. And that's why you need to crush this down. Now, I've done a whole video on how to do sampling by crushing and panning, crushing and testing your rock. If you have a rock that doesn't have obvious visible gold in it, crushing and testing it, you can do that yourself. And like I say, I've done a whole video on it, and I'll put a link to it here so you can take a look at that video if you're interested. There's a whole process for calculating, weighing the sample up, crushing it, weighing how much gold you get out of it, and then calculating how rich it really is.
And finally, on whatever kind of gold you're finding, whether it's easily visible or not, no matter what test you're going, if you have good gold, in order to find real gold, it's a skill and it takes knowledge. And in order to have that knowledge, I wrote a book. It's called Fistful of Gold, and it's to impart to you the knowledge of 40 plus years of me being out there looking for gold, and a degree in mining engineering that I have. So I wrote that to help you guys better be skilled at finding gold and have more success. And I also am partnering with a prospecting outfit called High Plains Prospectors. They sell all kinds of equipment from pans and sluice boxes to metal detectors, well, pretty much you name it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my book and about High Plains right now. This is my book, Fistful of Gold. It's an encyclopedia of everything you need to know to go out and find gold for yourself. It distills down my 45 years of experience out in the field prospecting, as well as my degree in mine engineering. It's, like I say, an encyclopedia. There's a lot to it. It's over 250,000 words long, hundreds of pages with hundreds of illustrations, teaching you what you need to know about geology, about mining districts, about techniques of finding gold. It covers metal detectors, sluicing, panning, dry washing, high bankers, you name it, it's covered in there. It talks some about platinum and diamonds, but it's mostly about gold because gold is more widespread. It is not so much a book about where to find gold, but a book about how to find gold. Because even if you have a location where gold was mined in the past and you go out there, well, where should you look to be successful in your prospecting, to find the gold that's there? This is the book that's going to tell you that information. I spent most of 10 years writing this book, so I thought a long time about it. It's got, like I say, lots of information and lots of illustrations, and I've had results from people who bought it. It's available on Amazon, but I recommend buying it through High Plains Prospectors, and I'll put a link in the description for buying this book through them. They have a better price than Amazon, and I have a special deal that I'll tell you a little bit more about, where you can get a 5% discount from the price even with that. On Amazon, the book rates a 4.7 out of 5, which means that of all the people that have bought it, they've been really highly satisfied, and I think you, if you buy my book, will be just as highly satisfied as well. Now let's talk a little bit more about High Plains Prospectors. They're a prospecting shop, a mail order prospecting shop that I partnered with. The deal is that I can get you a 5% discount, a coupon code, and I'm going to put the code to that right here. It's just Chris Ralph, all caps with no space between Chris and Ralph. You put that in there as a discount code and you'll get 5% off their already really good prices. I think it's a great deal where you win by getting a discount, I get a little percentage of that, and they get new business. So if you need prospecting supplies, High Plains is really the way to go. And I'll put information, like I say, in the description more about how you can work with them, because I'm working with them. They really are great guys, a great company. For even more information, I also have a website, and I'm going to show you my webpage and talk a little bit more about that right now.
This is my webpage. It's located at nevadaoutbackgems.com. You can Google it, or I have a link down in the description below. But there's lots of information here, miscellaneous stuff, pictures, some historic information as well, stories. It's got a lot of great fun stuff. You'll probably be interested in it.
Now, on all of my YouTube videos, I encourage you guys to ask questions. If you have thoughts, comments, suggestions for things that I ought to look at in my videos, things that you want to find out more about, and I answer 100% of my questions. There's not very many YouTubers out there that answer 100% of their questions. I'm one of the few. And so I will do my best to answer what you have. I mean, I only can write so much. Sometimes the answer is something where I'm going to recommend that you buy the book and read about it. I also ask that you subscribe to my channel, click the bell notification so that every time I come out with a new video, you'll be able to watch it. And like I say, I cover a huge amount of topics. I also have 250 videos that I've already done. And so you can go back through my catalog of videos on YouTube. I'm sure there'll be many videos there that you'll want to take a look at, especially if you have any interest in gold or platinum, diamonds, gemstones, geology, and that sort of stuff. My YouTube site is going to be right up your alley. So I'll see you again real soon. We'll be out in the field and back in the office at the whiteboard. And whether we're looking at gold or platinum, diamonds, gemstones, or other interesting geology, it's going to be fun. You're going to enjoy it, and we'll see you again real soon.